Okay. All right. Hey, Mara, how are you? Okay. I think this is working. So we are looking at everything that we got going on right now. Miracle shared a picture with me in the chat, which is awesome. Because then we know where we're at and what we're doing. Can you guys give me a picture in the chat instead of can you hear me? All right, can you guys hear me? Awesome. All right, so I've got right now, Miracle shared a picture in the chat with me of her map. And we talked about with her map, she's gonna go through and make the colors more saturated, which color saturation is like how light or how dark the actual color is, like a light red or a dark red. We're gonna go through and she's gonna take and a lot like I did on here, and make the colors just a little more saturated, where like what she ends up having is kind of spaces where you can see the line marks and the white of the page through there. So if we go back over those in a different direction, just like I am with this red, I can sit there and I can make the colors just a little more darker. And we're trying to make the areas just a little bit more consistent so that it's like all red and not some dark reds and some light reds in some spots. It'll make it so that I'm trying to keep my hand out of the way when I'm doing this. So right now, everything is consistent and you don't really see as many of the lines to doing this because I'm going through and I'm doing it. Now you can do that with the same color and just go over it multiple times, or you can also mix in a little bit of a different color, which is usually what I do. So I have this red on here, but it's now pretty much the same red throughout the entire space. And you don't see as many of the pencil marks through there because I went over it in a couple of different directions. And now I can go through and I can even add, I'm gonna do orange now, pink. I can go over the top of it with just a lighter color that's almost the same. And you know, pink is just like a lighter hue of red. I'm using all those vocabulary terms right now. So doing that, I just made this a lot darker and the color is more saturated. So it is more red. And you don't see it. It's so many of the lines when we're drawing with it. So with most of your maps, we can go through and do that. Where's this? So we have that going on. And then the other things that we need to look at right now is we also need to see whether or not our albums are all caught up. Okay. And one of the things that we did was, and we were just talking about the Google album because we had a question as to whether or not we could do black and white, and we can totally do black and white. I'm going to open this up and then I'm going to go into my Google. And then we all created that new Gmail. I got a bunch of screens around here. Okay, so if I go into my Gmail, and this is the wrong Gmail, I need to make sure I'm in the Gmail that we're using. And this is Mormon at EEVPA is the one that I'm using for this, for my sharing my albums. If I go into photos, and I'm gonna go, this is when I was talking about the Quante, where it's just black and white. He's still putting in more things, but it's almost like when we did our patterns and things like that with the doodles, he's totally put that in there. He's got excuse me, cross-hatching in some sections, and then he's repeating patterns in others, and it's starting to look very, very cool. This was another project that somebody turned in. She is in the process of going over this. She used a combination of markers and color pencils. And we're in the process of still making, because these blues and these greens are very saturated because she used a marker with them. But also too, what she can do is she can go over the marker with a color pencil, which is a really nice, lends a really nice quality to that kind of work as well, which is what she's doing. But boy, that's an amazing piece. So I'm going to go into my shared albums. And this is from the first week we were virtual, where we talked about doing our growth album. So, and our portfolios of the work that we've gotten completed. Here is DeQuante's. And this is looking a little bit like growth DeQuante, not your album. So with this one, you want to put DeQuante Hines growth first hour, okay? And then there should be another one in here that is semester one that just has your completed work. Am I right about that? Are they both the same? Okay. And that's cool. I just need that. But what this is doing too, is it's helping me to be like, oh, okay, I know he finished up all of his work. And if I have a question inside of Teams, or when I'm moving Teams to Power School, I can also come back to here. This is just making sure I have everything everywhere. I will say this is my growth album that I set up with using a lot of Amira's pictures. These are all in order of when they were created and in the order it went in. So this is her first day, her second day, her third day, her fourth day, her fifth day, her sixth day, and seventh day. Probably there's a couple of days in between there, but it's a very good indicator of this is how I started off, and this is how I got to the point where I need to finish. Inside of here, if you click on it, and it's the same thing on the phone too. They have these same options, but if I click on these dots, which has the more stuff in it, I can go into here, and there's one that says edit album. And there's a couple of things inside edit album that can help you out a lot. This up and down arrow, this one will take, and it should do it by hopefully the date that the photo was taken, which is very helpful if you put oldest first. You can also manually do it by just picking a picture up and dragging and dropping it if you want to. So there's those things. And then the other thing that I found really helpful is this text box. And this text box will sit here, and it will drop in a place where you can put in that. And this is how I put in that cut paper letters progress. If I did that, and then I can manually drag the photos above that I want to be inside of there. So if we added a text, let's do it this way. I'm going to put down demonstrating growth here. And then this, whoops, if I spelled it properly, it would be better. And then this text box too, I can pick up and drag and drop anywhere I want it to go. She says like she can. Maybe not. But it just adds a little bit of clarity to what I'm working on. And you'll see that blue line is where it's saying, okay, I'm going to put this here right behind that. And can't tell, I got too many picture boxes going on here. Let's see. No, okay. All right, so this is me taking everything and just reorganizing everything and making sure it's in the right order. Like I said, those arrows at the top will help you if it can, the computer might be able to do it by itself, but just make sure that you have everything in order. So we have a folder where somebody looks at me and says, or looks at you and says, what did you learn in this class? You can be like, oh, well, here it is inside of my growth folder. I learned, we started off with doing this and I was okay at it, but my M's gave me a little bit of problem. So right here is just a visual representation of everything we've got going on. The other reason why it's so important to have these Google albums is because later on, when you guys need DPS, you will not have access to your DPS email anymore. So setting up this Google account and moving stuff from my Teams into here could be exceedingly helpful for you later on. It'll have your work inside of there, and it's also attached to your name. So if somebody does a Google search on you, it's entirely possible that they could stumble across this work in a Google search, where it's like you have something academic in there, you have something that shows creativity in there, and you have just something that makes you different from everyone else. So we were talking about that. Inside of this one are the albums that I share with you too for the examples of the work. So here's the cartography one that we worked on, and these were all internet examples, and these were all examples of what your student or what your classmates did. And I've started moving some of the new ones in there that are complete, but there are a lot of people who are still working on that. And if we look at my albums here, the other thing that we have is like your arts in action or your social justice posters in there. I have some of the doodles in there, but this is where you can look and find stuff. And most of these should be shared with the public. So if somebody Googled me, they would find a lot of these things too. So inside of these sharing folders, I'm seeing Nathan, but it doesn't look like Nathan has anything in his folder. So we have to go back and get the pictures inside of his folder. What else is in your hour? So this is how we go through. Leia's in there. Lachey is in there. Lachey, are you in? And then too, like I said, having these things in order is really kind of good. Lachey's got a bunch of work in there. Cool. So we just need to go through and make sure that, because this is our final, this was worth like about 300-400 points right now, because we had to set up the Gmail for it, and you needed to take a screenshot and share that with me. You needed to set up your first Google photo album, which should say your name, 7th hour, this one's a little messed up, and then S1 for all of your finished work, and then growth for your growth one, and then the hour should be at the end of that one. So DeQuante, we just need to come in here and put whether this was growth or all of our finished work on this one. So DeQuante Hines growth first hour, I think is what this one is. And then two, you'll find those pictures for your growth folder. For your growth folder will be inside of the chat, the ones that you shared with me every day. And then your finals will be in the assignments that you turned in Teams. And we're just trying to make sure everything is in 2 places, just because you never want to give somebody your only copy of something. If you want to use this too for your other classes, it's great, because all you have to do is set up a new album, and then you can take pictures of whatever class you're in and keep them in that album, and then be able to share that album with your other teacher. So let's say like with math, you always can do your screenshot or your print screen on your laptop and save those pictures and put them into there using the same processes that we used in order to fill our folders with our stuff from Teams. So that's another thing that we need to look at. One of the last things we want to look at is figuring out what we have inside of class. And the way you can do that is if you go into Teams, all Teams, and click on your hour. Click on your hour. Click on your hour, and we'll go to here. If you click on grades, what will end up happening is it will put you into, hold on, not that one. It will put you into where you are with your work. Let's pick on Amira today. She likes it. All right, so if we go through here, we can see some of the things that we have to turn in still. And with hers, she has, I'm sure she has, she just needs to move it there. Her Google Growth album is, she needs to go in there and she needs to turn that in. There are some things that have comments, and then if you click on this, and this is on a laptop, but it looks a lot like it does on this, on the wait, it's on a laptop, but your phone will do it too. It will not show you these comment bubbles. So if we go into here, we just did not do a screenshot of the Gmail she sent. So we're going to go into our Gmail. We're going to go back into there, into the sent folder, and we can click on that and do it. This is more of a double check, because when I had an issue with somebody, it's like they didn't send me an email and they're like, I sent you an email. I sent you an email. And I went in here and I looked at the screenshot of it. And what they ended up doing was sending an email to Mrs. Mormon, EEVPA at Gamil. They spelled Gmail wrong. So obviously that email went nowhere. So we need to check that out and make sure that we have everything. And again, this is just a double check to make sure everything is where it's supposed to be. All right. And clearly I need to go through and get you guys' grades all set up. So we're going to go through and you guys are going to go double check me and yourselves, right? If it turns out that you have something that you turned in and I graded it on here, let's say, and I didn't grade it in Teams, do me a favor, kind of send me that picture and then send me a screenshot from PowerSchool, but include in here the final that you turned in, and let's make sure that we have it turned in both spots. One of the issues that we run into is a lot of times I go through and I grade everything on time, and then I may or may not get back to it because I have 5 different hours and a bunch of people turning in things at a bunch of different times. I don't mind it, but sometimes it makes my record keeping a little bit hard, and I really want to give you as much credit as I possibly can for it, which is why we set up the grading scale that we did. If you turned in something on time, you got 25 extra credit points, which really helped a lot of people out. If you turned it in up to a week late, you will get 100% on it. And then if you turned it in more than a week late, you got a 70% on it. I need you to go through and make sure that everything's turned in and that everything's where it's supposed to be. So the worst case scenario, if you did no work at all and turned in everything at the end of the semester, you could still come out of this with a C. So I worked very hard to try and figure out how to get those things done. But like I said, going back and grading things, it makes it a little bit more difficult. So make sure you go through and check that you have all of your assignments turned in. The one thing I will say that's good for this is it tells me that Amira, God love her, has not even looked at this assignment on there. So we may have some issues with that. So this is kind of a gentle reminder to get her stuff going on. Okay. Does anybody have any questions about what they're going to be working on today? Now, the last thing that I just want to say about this is we have been sharing differently now. Instead of saying present, at least that's how I wanted it to be, instead of saying present, I wanted you all to put a picture in the chat of what you're working on so we could have some kind of a conversation about what you needed to work on that day. So now when we go back through here to see who's following directions today, we have Miracle is following directions today. Can anybody else get that happening for me right now, please? And one of the other things that this does is it also says, okay, these pictures are ones that could be in your growth profile too, right? So the other thing, in order to find these pictures, if you go into your Teams, this chat is available to you all times. If you go into Teams, go into all Teams, oopsie, click on your hour, and then inside of the general channel, it's right here inside of this meeting. So we have all of this information that we've shared inside of here. Everything that we've done inside of this meeting is still inside Teams, and you can access that even when we're not in crafts. Okay. So I need everybody to go back through, double check everything that they have going on, make sure everything's turned in the right spot. We have about 4 or 5 days to get this done and to make sure everything's caught up. So this is the map exercise. And then what other assignments did we have? And there are, again, there are updated albums for everything that we're doing. So if we look at cartography and we go into the assignment, this is student view. Inside of the assignment is this Google cartography album. And if you go into this, it shows you all of everyone else's finished work as well. And like I said, I am trying to get everybody's new stuff in there so you can see like what everybody else is doing and how they got that done. All right, are we good with everything now? Do we have any questions at all? All right, I'm gonna try and stop doing what I'm doing right now.